I wonder what your connection was to this material, because I wonder if you were sitting there like, yes, finally I can make my ab scam movie. So how did this develop?
I think it really, for me, began with Amy and Christian on the movie called The Fighter, and Mark Wahlberg, and Melissa Leo and the sisters in that picture, which to me was, I'd written Silver Linings before that, but that was where I really discovered this world of characters that I loved, and I said, I think I can keep making movies in this world. I very much love it, with salt of the earth, instinctive people who are trying to survive. And Silver Linings then became another kind of chapter of that for me, and then the characters just jumped out at me. And I found myself talking to Bradley, who was in the cutting room of Silver Linings, and I talked to him about it, and I talked to Christian in his backyard about it. And what we seized upon was the larger notion of people reinventing themselves, of how people have passion, and what an artist. He was almost like a theater director, and these were all members of the company. And how everybody everywhere has to sort of create a self that they believe in, and then at certain points that has to change. So these were the ideas that we were talking about.
I had a great deal of fun playing both. I really loved playing Dickie. I really loved playing Irv, and you know, both based on real characters. With this one, you know, more distant from the actual man who you know, was hired by the FBI. But I think, you know, the very original script was more like a historical drama, right? It was more of a sort of a plot-oriented point. And then what David was talking about, you know, I remember walking around my back garden, and we were talking about, oh, what do we like about this? And it was always about this notion of reinvention of yourself, and being born into circumstances that have nothing to do, and no choice of yours, and everybody's desire, if it's not what you want, you know, to be able to change yourself and to reinvent yourself, and the sense of performance. So in that sense, yes, very much about to do with you know, acting as well. And if you're going to do it, you got to believe it yourself. And as a con man, you know, you have to believe it. You can't just, it's not enough that the other people believe it, you have to be believing it yourself.
You know, as an actor, if you're invested, you're always going to kind of be wounded by your character in some way, and you try to, you know, drive a certain amount of distance between your life and your character's life, but they bleed in between, and definitely I could feel sort of the cost of reinvention and sort of the hustle that we play on ourselves and the lies that we tell ourselves in order to reinvent. It means you have to leave something behind, and sometimes if you reinvent and you don't actually deal with the shit, then you end up with the shit, you know. And so that's sort of where Edith finds herself when she's confronted with the truth. And so she has to, as she so brilliantly says, sometimes all you have is some, I won't swear, but toxic, messed up choices. So that's kind of where Edith finds herself, and no truer words are ever spoken to Edith than those words from Rosalind.
And then there's Rosalind, who blows up a microwave and consorts with gangsters, and yes.
But she's young and she's naive, and I think that people can be manipulative. I think some people can be manipulative without realizing it, and some people can be manipulative by saying, I am manipulating this situation, but it's only to do the right thing. It's to get, she believes that divorce is wrong, and she believes wholeheartedly that she and Irving should be together. And so by imprisoning him, she's doing the right thing. And by dangling her son, his son, that is her version of forcing him to do the right thing. And, you know, when everybody is afraid of the mafia, she thinks this is a perfect opportunity to ruin Irv's night to get back at him because he deserves it. So her thought process, I think the one line that kind of sums up Rosalind for me was when we were having an argument in the bedroom, and I was packing up to go to Miami to run away with a mafia member and take his son with me. And she said, "Why can't you just be happy for me?" Really makes it very clear that she's how can you be mad at her? She's so clueless. Because you know, when I read the script and we had, you know, all of her actions, and the most exciting part was David and I coming up with, why are they that way? Why is she this way?
There's that scene right there. There's that one which, right, I mean, where we changed everything. There was that morning, yes, and there was this very, very crucial plot point, which David, quite correctly, he said, you know what, I don't like that anymore. And so we went and sat in the bedroom for, 15 minutes and said, well, what are we going to do? And it ends up being that fantastic scene where you get Irv going in and having a go at her because her boyfriend just put a bag over his head and is trying to kill him. And then the scene ends with him thanking her for doing that.
Not exactly a symmetry.
You know? Yeah.
All his movies have that beautiful combination, the dance between comedy and drama, and the magical moments of humor and utter loss. And that's all over all of his films, and it's certainly here in this movie. 1 second you're laughing, hopefully in the next minute your heart is breaking for these people. They're rich and they're complicated and they're hilarious, hopefully, and more than anything, they're a bit magical. There's a lot of magical moments in this movie that are all because of the way that he sees the world, I think.
Well, first of all, I never viewed it as a comedy. Even if people do consider it just that, you can't play comedy anyway. So my part, all I can do is focus on the truth and work every day to make those truths interesting and believable. And those are my parameters.
I gotta say, I never viewed it as a comedy either. I mean, to me, because for a comedy you're playing for the laughs. To me, we just did it truthfully, and that ends up being funny because people are funny, situations are funny, But to me, it's whatever the hell you want to call it. But I would say there's a lot of funniness within it. But people, every single one of you out there, you got a hell of a lot of funny stuff about you don't even realize. We're laughing at you right now.
Yeah, we're laughing inside right now at you.
But you just play it for real, and when you've got these real situations and these fascinating characters, it becomes funny. So I agree with Jeremy on that. Like, I never actually looked and went, "Hey, we got to go for laughs." There's no nudge, nudge, wink, wink, looking at the camera whatsoever.
Some of the funniest moments in the film were never plotted as such. I mean, you get one of the biggest laughs in the film, which we never anticipated, when Richie, or Bradley's character, apologizes to Amy and you in the hallway after she smashed him over the head with a glass picture frame. He says, "I'm sorry, you okay?" Amy says, "I'm so okay, are you okay?" He says, "Irv, I'm sorry." And I didn't know what you were going to do, And he goes like, I try to imitate it and it's impossible. I love it so much. He goes, he does it twice, like he's going to go, he has nothing to say. He's not going to say yes or I'm also sorry. It's just like, this whole situation is just ridiculous. It's just like, I have nothing to say to you. And I remember you made a joke that day. You said, "Should we hug it out?" Because Irving would not want to do that with this man. I want each one of them to do every range, and then I write for Amy, and I see Amy last year at different events, and I talk to her about how I want her character to be the rawest I've ever seen, the most raw, like in the Curlers, and also the most cunning and beautiful that I've ever seen in the same role, and telling Bradley I want him to be from the borough, and I want him to live with his mother, which is the first thing we talked about, which is always so fascinating to me, that what's motivating him, and Carmine's house I wanted to live in basically with all those kids. I mean, I loved making that home with him, and my son played one of those kids, and telling him about all my favorite. I try to give my favorite stuff to everybody, like the Duke Ellington, because it's personally beloved to me, and I hope it's, at least if they have to fake it, at least credibly, that it's something they can at least relate to. I give it from myself. So all these people have a love for life. Amy's character has a love to reinvent herself, and she embraces a new identity. I've known people like that my whole life. My father's had friends from the Bronx. You're like, that guy's from the Bronx. He looks like he's an English lord, but how does he pull that off? But I guess, okay, he does that, and he decided to do that. Business associates of my father's, so that Amy does that and becomes British, which is a wonderful moment. That's what I live for. Their love of Duke Ellington together. That they both knew that. Their love of, and it's for her with Jennifer, the love of the child together, and sort of a fight becomes in a marriage becomes a weird love of its own in a weird way, and Richie, he loves his fish, and he loves the idea of these two. He loves joining their theater company and training with them, and he wants to kind of just keep advancing that art, and he loves the idea of doing justice. Only to, I think, when he sees through the curtain at the end, you know, where we've come since then, quite frankly, is that a briefcase of money is a very quaint thing, and today it's tens or hundreds of millions of dollars that change hands legally through the Koch brothers or through, you know, any number of legal channels, and it's just beyond even. That was a much more innocent world, you know. So Richie just peers behind that curtain, and I love seeing his face at the end of the movie. He says, "That's what I was trying to do," you know. I mean, that's just a very real moment for me.